Hi, I'm Cinnamon Cooney, your art sherpa, and today I want to show you some do's and don'ts on how to paint waves. I think there are a lot of misconceptions that beginner artists have about how to paint water, and I would like to clear those up today. I'm going to show you tips, tricks, and hacks to help you improve and get better at painting waves today. Get your paint, get your brushes, come back and meet me at the easel right now. We're going to get better at waves. So let's talk real fast about the misconceptions that you might have as a new artist on how to paint an ocean, and then I'm going to show you how to correct them and blow your own mind with how well you can paint a wave today. So the first thing is that new artists sometimes are confused about what blue to use in a sky. The clouds can sometimes feel like they're little round cotton balls. They're not really sure of the shape, and they paint them with just white. The horizon line isn't level, and that's something you would always have even on a choppy seas. A distant horizon line would be nice and level. On the wave, they totally understand that there's some shading, but they're not sure of where the shadows and lights go. And the foam and surf sometimes is like they're trying to brush how cool and in motion it is, but they're not really sure how to execute that. So I'm going to show you all the ways that you, as an absolute beginner, can do this today. Let's look at our materials and get started. So I have a 9x12 canvas board here. This is pre-adjusted, ready to paint. You can just paint on any canvas surface that you have or canvas paper surface for acrylic paint. Let's look at our paints over here. So I have titanium white heavy body paint. I have phthalo green, phthalo blue, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, Doaxazine purple, and then I also have a little bit of this fluid titanium white. This is a softer body paint. I have got my splattering brush. I've got my clouding brush and some assorted brushes for acrylic paint that are going to get this in real easy. Let's start with fixing that first thing that I think messes with new painters, setting the horizon line. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to set a level horizon line by just simply using my ruler. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure, I think on this, about 5 inches. Just cutting the canvas in half. And I'm going to make a really, really light pencil line to do that. Just really light. And that's going to let me know where my sky is. Let's get that sky in. I'm going to show you a really cute way, an easy way of making a better colored sky. So I've got a number 12 bright synthetic filaments. I'm going to take this brush, drag off the extra water, right? Extra water. And I'm going to take a little of this burnt sienna into my phthalo blue. And this is going to give me the color of a very stormy day. I'm going to dip it in my water, take it over to my titanium white. And I'm going to come to the top of my canvas. Something new artists do is sometimes they kind of color a bunch of different directions. But I'm going to go across the top, back and forth with horizontal brush strokes. I'm going to let my paint be a little bit streaky. As I come down, I'm going to get more water because I want my sky to go from darker to lighter as it nears the water line up here, or the horizon line. Isn't that easy? Just adding more white, not rinsing out my brush. I'm letting the pigment in my brush tint the white. I don't want this to be pure white down here because I'm going to put in some really cool clouds. And I'm just smoothing my sky. Now you see I have a beautiful gradated sky for which I can hang clouds. I'm going to rinse out my brush, put it to the side, and I'm going to get this number 8 cloud brush. This is a dome brush with a stiff synthetic filament. And I'm going to do a cool thing. I'm going to just load it with my white paint right here. And I'm going to add some distant clouds, kind of sweeping up. This would be part of the storm. And how I'm going to get these is the canvas is a little bit wet, and I'm being very light with my brush strokes. These are super light brush strokes. And I'm just sweeping up distant clouds in the far off sky. Right? You can see through them. They're airy. There's a nice curve to this billow. So when I'm telling the story of this slightly wavy day and this choppy sea, when you look at the sky will tell a story that will feel believable to the weather and the waves, right? So I have nice little distant clouds that I've done, loading up my brush again. I'm going to use a couple of tools here. I'm going to use this brush and my finger. And first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make some little, you're going to see I'm working just the dome, and I'm just putting the edge of this cloud here, and I'm wiggling my brush around. The other thing that I'm doing, right, is I'm coming up and down, right? I'm just kind of making these little shapes that feel regular and wild and free and cloud-like. You can see my hand is wiggling to get this, right? Then I'm going to take my finger even and blend some of this out. Look at that. So some of this is white. Now we're getting those kind of foggy, distant clouds that we sometimes see at the beach, right? So that there I go curve up and keep curving around. Look at that. Let's make sure that there's little bits of airiness. I'm trying to make sure I don't repeat my shapes and make the same sort of little circle cotton balls again and again. Right? Little finger can go here. A lot of cloud artists use a finger, so don't feel like you can't. Where you need to blend. Once you have a nice little distant airy cloud bank, you're good. Now let's look at our ocean. So what we are going to have here is our distant choppy water and our wave and the water in front of the wave. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself just a little bit of my in front of my wave bank. See how I've taken my ruler and I've marked up about 1 inch? And then I'm going to come a couple inches above that, and coming towards the middle of my canvas, I'm going to make a slight rise. Right? It's coming up towards the middle of my canvas. It's a slight rise. And then I'm going to wander, and look how light I'm using my pencil, because pencil can blend into your paint. I'm going to crash the wave down here to where I've got my line. And I'm going to, from this peak, think of this as a mountain, kind of take this down a little bit. This isn't sharp, this is subtle. This is this wall of water pushing up, and here's where its peak energy is, so that's why it has to crash there. Now I've got to get this horizon line in how I want it. I'm going to take this number 8 bright, it has a nice sharp edge, get my brush wet, drag off the extra water, and I'm going to take a little of my ultramarine in my phthalo blue and my phthalo green, and I'm going to make my distant water. Okay, and one very important thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to come across here on the edge of my brush, make as straight of a line as I can. If you need to tape it off, but what you want is a straight line, because water horizon lines where you can see them are going to always be level, and that's something that messes with new artists. Get my brush wet, go ahead and mix the phthalo blue, phthalo green, and ultramarine blue. This is my deep and distant watercolor. This is my far off cold ocean. So this color tells my mind that my ocean is cold. The other thing I'm doing is noticing that my brush strokes are also, again, horizontal. You want your brush strokes to be horizontal and not go diagonal like this. That won't feel like water. Cover this far off water. All right. Ultramarine, phthalo blue, phthalo green. I'm I'm trying to be a little careful with my pencil line, but it's more important that my brush stroke is horizontal. You guys have got this. Now, pick up on each side of your brush just a dab of white. See how we've done that? And let's add a little tonality to our distant water. The thing we want to make sure, dab, dab, is that it's pretty horizontal. We're blending it right into the wet paint, so it gives us a soft blend, and it also creates the illusion of a little of the sky reflected in the water. When we have that done, rinse off this brush, and we'll want you to load up a bead on both sides of white paint. And then you're going to come as steadily as you can into your canvas and make some distant little chop. So you're going to see I'm on the edge of these bristles, and I'm kind of gently letting my hand waver a bit because I'm trying to tell this story of some little waves. Notice I'm not going like this or making any crazy lines. I'm following the directionality of what now you're starting to understand is maybe the wind. In the far off distance, I just make some very soft, barely there lines. So suddenly now you've painted that distant water that you've been seeing. That's a little bit choppy. That's all we have to do there. Rinse out your brush. Okay, next part, anatomy of a wave. Top of the wave has the most light showing through, so it's the most aquatic color. It's the most marine color. It's very light and it's very bright. Underneath the curl and along the foot of the wave, underneath this base here, it's going to be dark, really dark. And the direction of our brush stroke is going to be important. And we're going to be coming from this surf in front of it and pulling up as if it's being vacuumed up. It's being sucked up into the wave. It's really actually a lot of fun to do. Let me show you how you can do this. So the next color we're going to learn to make is phthalo turquoise. Now you can buy phthalo turquoise. I'm just happy to make it. And phthalo turquoise is basically phthalo blue and phthalo green together. And depending on where you're saying your water is, it will be more green or more blue. I'm going to pull this off. See, I don't have very much paint on my brush. I'm going to come over to my white, and I want the top of my wave to be a little more green than blue. So here we go. I found that color. This is quite a light blue. It's a little more green. I'm going to come up to this edge of the wave, and I'm just following this sort of wandering little line. And I'm going to leave this here. Actually, I'm not going to bring my light color. And now I'm going to do something super important. I'm going to curl my stroke to imply the wall of water. See that? Just a curved stroke. So if it's starting here, it kind of curves this way. And it's okay if it's streaky. Get a little water on my brush, swirl that around so I have a nice result. Okay, now I'm going to add a shadow under here, but I'm just curling this down. So once I have this, the other place I can put this is I can maybe get more in my turquoise, get a little more white on my brush. Here we go, I found my phthalo green. Now I'm going to come on the top of my wave and curve the opposite direction. That's the water falling over. And we would see a little bit of that really, really light reflective falling over. Once we have those light values, the next color we're going to do is the deep phthalo turquoise, which is the phthalo green and the phthalo blue together. And I'm going to come here and pull this color again in the curve of my wall of water. Let's blend these seams. If I have to work the edge of my brush, I will. And it's actually okay to have little bits of colors sort of pulling up and streaking up into your wave. Phthalo green, phthalo blue. Here we go, just pulling this up. Now I know I've got the surface in front of where my wave is. I can take this now up here, starting to imply that shadow. See how we've got this? Much easier. Are you curving? Retaining the light color here. Next color. Actually, I might want to add some of that there. So take your phthalo green and your phthalo blue, making your phthalo turquoise. And just make sure that you have some of this in your curl coming down to where the water is going to be. You can kind of make these uneven lines showing the energy now. See a different way of showing that energy? So now we've got this and this already. Your ocean is a lot more oceany than maybe you've done before. Now let's create this space right here, and we're going to do that with an interesting thing. Now we're going to get the ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, Doaxazine purple, and even a little of the green. This is kind of this crazy deep color. A little more phthalo green, phthalo blue. Here we go. You can see that it's kind of like this really, really deep cold color. And we're going to work the edge here coming up. So pull this up. This can kind of curl up way far up this side of the wave. That's where the water is thickest, coolest. All right. Now you're starting to see this wave curl. Here we go. Much better than what we did before, isn't it? Get more of that dark color. If you need to mix more, mix more. Ultramarine blue, phthalo turquoise. I need a little more phthalo blue. And I know that because it's too purple. There we go. It's a very great deep color. Pulling up our wave. We want the canvas to color completely. I'm going to pull some of these dark streaks up here, and it's okay if a little of this darkness is right under this wave. That's a shadow. We're going to pull so much froth here to the edge. Have so much fun with our wave splashback. There we go. How are we loving our wave? Rinse out that brush a little bit. And I am going to dust a little of that pigment on my brush and get some white. Okay? I want a little more green in this. I'm making this sort of foam. And one of the things is sometimes people want to make the foam like really, really white, but you don't actually want it to be white. I'm going to run this up the wave. I'm going to keep track of the direction. And I will come back with some whiter foam, but I want to imply, I'm going to do some brush strokes down in my little curve. You're implying that this water is coming up. I'm working the edge of my brush here, it's just the corner. Because not all the foam is white, white, white. Maybe just brush a little reflection from the sky up here. There we go. Now, The next fun thing I get to do is put in my shadow of my crashing froth and maybe the top of my wave, and then I get to finish with my highlight on my seafoam and my splatter on my crash. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my, there it is, same brush that I did my clouds with. I'm going to swirl this around. You want just a good stiff brush, and I'm going to make the shadow color. So I've really taken this more to the purple, you can see that there. And I'm going to get my white in here. I want it to not be white white. Because one of the things that when you're new you don't realize is that the foam has a lot of different values. And so I'm going to try to paint the energy of the wave crashing here. Where it leads, I can give it kind of a hard edge because the gravity is pulling and saying a particular story. But there's always little droplets that are going to be escaping. Let's say when we're up here at the top, we'll definitely have less to say about all that. Okay, I'm just making this little story. It's at the top, let some wind catch this a bit. I'm flicking this up. That reflects that. Isn't that nice? All right. Now either dry your painting with the hair dryer or let it dry before we put on the last couple of layers. Okay, let's finish out the little details that are going to make the seascape pop for you. The first thing is I'm going to grab this small brush. This is a number 2 bright, and I'm going to get just a little bit of my purple watercolor, and I'm going to come along the top of my wave really delicately with this. And then I'm going to do some flicks up as I'm coming near this part. The other place that I'm wanting to do this is I'm going to come along the top edge of the curl here with a very fine line, and I'm going to pull down just a couple of these little reflections. There'll be some white ones here in a second, but I just want to start talking about that part of the water. Now add a little more white to your brush. I don't want it to be white white, but I want it to be brighter than the foam I put down. Just define a little bit of some of this foam. See, now we've had some shadows. I'm kind of jiggling my brush around. I'm making ellipses. I'm paying attention to the brush strokes that I've done in the wave up to this point, and that's going to help me keep my foam that's rushing up this wave looking like it's supposed to. And you can see why having it just be white, white, white would be almost too much. Sometimes on the edge of this brush it's very light. It's just dancing on the canvas. You can see my hand working back and forth, but still paying attention. Just wiggling back and forth. Isn't that nice how that can feel just like the ocean right there? Put a little more foam up, a couple spots, because it can get up there. It starts to pull away as you get to the top of the wave. So once you take that in and you've started to see that little foam, let's come with a bead of just really strong white. You can see how I beaded this on my brush. I'm going to dance along the top of my darker color and do a couple little flicks out, and then along the top of my wave. And pulling in my reflections on the curl. So now I've really created some value changes there. Rinsing that out, and get this and make sure it's rinsed out. And I'm going to load it up with just white, white, white. Let's come into our foam. And I don't want to take away all the dark color that I put in, because that is giving my foam value. It's saying some of this is deep, Some of this is deep. Bringing that down there so you can see that little patterns. They're just random, and maybe that little bit runs out ahead of everybody, because waves will do that. A little bit will get ahead. And you want to look and see if you like that white water that you've got. One last awesome thing that you can do, and I really like to do on my oceans, is to do the splatter. Now, if you check the iCard, I actually have a whole video on splatter and stars to help you understand better, to have control over what seems like an accidental technique, but is highly intentional among us artists, and is a total process I recommend that you get into, even though it's hard on the manicure. I'm going to take my splatter brush in my soft-bodied white that I put out, and I'm going to load it up. And one of the things that I like to do is make sure that, yep, hard on my hands, but I like to move the paint around the bristles so there's no area where it's heavily loaded or not. Now you can always test your splatter, see, to make sure what kind of droplets that you're getting on your palette or a scratch piece of paper. And I'm going to come over here, and in a couple places I'm going to get close to the canvas. I'm going to pull slowly, and I'm going to make some exciting little moments of water. Now, by the way I'm holding the brush and the way I'm splattering, I actually have a lot of control over the direction that it's going. If I got far away from my canvas, I wouldn't have a lot of control over the direction that it was going. It could get a lot of places I didn't want it to be. Do I have some little freckles of paint on my face after this? Yes, I do. And I wouldn't want to do this after I really, really had my nails done. But I don't really do my nails, so used to, just not as much anymore. So busy painting. All right, here we go. I don't want a lot coming back this way. I just want to talk about these. Maybe a little bit more here. You just tell the wave story. As soon as you're real happy with that story, definitely stop and let that rest. I always like to make sure too that I don't leave any of my tools in water, because it can cause them to crack and curl. All right, I'm happy with that. It's time to do a signature. I hope you enjoyed learning ways that you can be better at waves, because waves are easy, waves are fun. I cannot wait to see your paintings. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and I hope to see you at the easel really soon. Bye-bye!